Hey, on this episode of Health Supplement Business Mastery, I have James Oliver here, the CEO of Atlas Protein Bars. James started Atlas Bars totally bootstrapped, pretty much in like his kitchen, and built it over 3 years. At the 3 year mark, he got to $1.5 million, and which was pretty much all e-commerce, about 90% or more of e-commerce sales, all through, I guess, in the beginning stages, social media. Started out, like I said, bootstrapped, got some funding, I think around 2020. James, welcome to the show. Let's kind of get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and very much looking forward to getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So
Happy to
first
start
of all,
anywhere.
thanks for sending over that variety pack of the Atlas bars. They're delicious, and also I love the way you position them. Like each one on the back of them has like a unique saying, right? Like failure hurts, regret hurts more. On this one, and this one is don't let your dreams stay dreams, right? But what I really, really like is the little tiny warning copy that says, warning, consuming this product may cause you to reach the absolute limits of human potential. Do not take it if you have no interest in conquering your day. Potential side effects may incur increased satisfaction, loss of cravings, and the ability to consume, the inability to consume all other protein bars. Brilliant marketing just on the back of the product. 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, 3 net carbs, 300 milligrams of ashwagandha. Talk to me about that ashwagandha, because this makes it a functional food, not just a bar of protein.
Yeah, so we initially had decided to put in the ashwagandha because we wanted to provide additional functionality beyond what the nutritionals offered. Obviously, high protein, low sugar. That's great. It tastes great. It satiates you for a very long time. The decision to put in the ashwagandha was, well, it would be it would be great if we could add in some additional benefits that people would get even more value from. So we put in the ashwagandha a couple of years ago, and the primary benefit we were looking to do was there's a tremendous amount of research on ashwagandha. It's probably one of the more widely studied supplements. I think in total there's probably over 1,000 studies that have been done on it. It's been used for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine. And the benefits range everything from stress reduction to physical performance enhancement. There's really pretty significant research across like all aspects of human physiology, and so we thought it was a no-brainer to put in there, and we got a good response initially when we put it in, because people, yeah, they wanted to get something more out of their product than just the nutritionals. And you still see this today with the functional foods growing more and more, where people are consuming food not just to curb hunger, but they're doing so because they are looking to solve a specific issue that they're having. And as opposed to going to medication or something else, they're trying to do so with food. So whether that's sleep, whether that's energy, whether that's focus, people across the board are really looking for food products that can really help them solve these functional issues that they're having. So we thought that it would make sense to align ourselves with that.
Yeah, I think it really sets the product apart from other products. Like it's such a crowded space, protein bars, especially like on the shelves of supermarkets. And I know you didn't start there, right? You just started with e-commerce. You started bootstrapped. I mean, you basically funded the money by just doing Uber, like being an Uber driver to fund the business, right?
Yeah, yeah. So initially it started because I went to China. The long story is I went to China in school because I was studying Mandarin Chinese and I wanted to live in China. So I lived with a family there who only spoke Chinese for about 6 months. And I'd always been very into health and nutrition. I was sports nutritionist, had done very long endurance events like 30, 50 miles. And so I wanted some way to basically stabilize my nutrition while I was over there because I knew that going over there, I was going to be eating a lot of carbs, a lot of rice, a lot of noodles, a lot of bao buns, and that is what I did. But I wasn't sure what was going to be available to me for sources of protein. So I wanted something that was shelf stable, that I could take with me, that I could feel good about consuming every day, that would help me kind of augment what I was going to be eating over there. And I looked and I looked and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find something that was shelf stable, that tasted good, that had clean ingredients, clean nutrition, high protein, low sugar. And so I just made it. So I made a couple hundred of these nutrition bars. I enlisted my mom to help make a couple hundred of these bars. I put them in Tupperware containers. I brought them over with me to China, and then I did exactly that. I did eat a lot of bao buns. I did eat a lot of rice and a lot of noodles, and I ate these bars every single day. And then I got back. I had 1 year left of college, and I was like, I really think, I know that's a super crowded market, but I really do think that this problem that I was looking to solve myself, something that's shelf stable, that has good nutrition, good ingredients, that if I have this problem, there probably are others that have this as well. So that was my hunch. And in order to kind of test that hunch, what I did is I put together a simple survey, and I identified who my target market was. At that time, I was going after CrossFit gyms. So I put together a list of 100 emails of CrossFit gyms in the greater Boston area. I put together a product survey that I didn't even have a product at the time. I just described it and I sent out the survey cold, and I got like 50 responses. And the signal that I got that really made me go forward was that 100% of the people that responded said that they would be interested in trying the product. And I was like, okay, it's not just a hunch. Like there's people who have now indicated that they would be interested in trying this. So that gave me the confidence to go forward with using the money that I had made from driving Uber. I would get up early at like 4 a.m. in the morning when I was in school and just drive Uber around the Boston area. And I'd saved a couple $1,000s from doing that. And to do the initial production run of product, I needed it was somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. But from the money that I had made from driving Uber and landscaping and selling knives throughout college, I had enough to fund that initial production run. And I ordered it before I graduated from school, got it in, and then started selling it basically the day that I graduated. So that's kind of the compressed timeline of my last 2 years of school and how I went right from that into this.
And at that point, you were selling it personally at gyms, right? You weren't doing online yet, or were you doing e-commerce right from the start?
So we had a website right from the start, but my primary intent in the beginning was to basically test product market fit, because I had described it and I had gotten feedback on the concept that people were like, yeah, this is something that I want. This is good, but that's entirely different than giving them an actual product and seeing if they're going to pay money for it. So I spent the first probably 9 months just going from gym to gym, driving around, doing really just like old school knock on the front door, walk in and be like, hey, I have this nutrition bar. Would you be interested in me sampling it and then potentially selling it at your gym? And I'm not somebody who that came naturally to. I'm not somebody who's gonna walk into a room and immediately make friends with everyone. I'm probably more on the reserve side. So that was definitely like trial by fire. Just it was very good training, just walking into a place and being like, hey, literally off the street, and trying to sell something. And yeah, I did that for the first 9 months, probably hit a few hundred gyms in the greater Boston area. And after doing that, I was like, I got more confidence that this was the right thing to do, and that there really was a space for this product.
Yeah, and you learn so much about your customer by doing that legwork.
You do, yeah. Having the product consumed in front of you and seeing people's reactions is very, very different than just having somebody write a review online, which is great. It's great information to get somebody's written review online, but it's a whole nother layer of information that you miss when you can't see them chewing it, see what their eyes do, see like if they are just politely saying like, oh, this is good, or like if they're like, oh, this is really good, like where can I get this? You can just tell there's so many behavioral things that you miss when you don't see somebody consume it in person. That's really, really helpful in the beginning to get early feedback to really just improve your product.
Yeah. So that early days, I'm imagining all of that Uber and knife money went to the first production run.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And any kind of consumer goods company, the biggest expense is going to be the product. Usually it's going to be somewhere around half of your total. If you're making $1 in revenue, it's probably going to cost you 50 cents in the beginning, at least, to generate that revenue. For supplements, it's probably lower. It's probably, depending on what you're selling, but could be as low as 20 cents, maybe 10 cents, depending on what you're marketing and what your positioning is. But yeah, the biggest expense was definitely inventory, and pretty much all funding had to go to inventory. I didn't have any budget for marketing. I didn't pay myself anything. So all of it was just buying the product, selling the product, repeating. And I knew that in the beginning, the economics you're working with, you're not going to, they're not sustainable. You can't make a product for $2 and sell it for $2.50 and expect to build a business that way. But in many manufacturing industries, you're going to dramatically decrease your costs as you scale volume. And so I knew that I wasn't really concerned with making money from day one, but what I needed to do is I needed to get to a critical volume so that the business would be sustainable.
Right. So when did you hit that critical volume? Was it when you went to e-commerce?
Yeah, so the initial phase of going to these gyms, I always knew that wasn't going to be scalable because there's only one of me and I can't be in two places at once. So I was only going to be able to scale as fast as I could move around to different gyms, which I knew was not sustainable. So we really started to gain volume when we went to e-commerce after we had kind of proven product market fit. And that was in 2018 is when we really started to scale. 2018, 2019, that's when we started to get some really serious volume. And within days, we were selling more over a couple day period than I did in the first 9 months through e-commerce. And that's not, there would have been no way that I could have matched that same volume doing what I was doing with the boots on the ground approach.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's just really good for understanding product market fit, understanding how to position the product, understanding how to improve the product. But yeah, you can't really build a business like that. E-commerce is where it's at. So at that point, I think you were doing 100% social media as your traffic source. Is that right?
Yeah, mostly social media, but we still also were doing some in-person things because
Okay.
what I learned about in-person is that it might not be super scalable, but it's also very cost efficient customer acquisition. Like if somebody, say we did like an event, like a gym event, and we were able to sample 200 people in that day and say that it took 4 hours of my time. 200 people to sample 200 people online is going to cost you probably thousands of dollars in acquisition spend to do that. So if you can capture their contact, if you can say, if they say, oh, I like this, where do I get it? You can get it from our website or you can get it from Amazon. It actually can be a pretty efficient form of customer acquisition, especially when your alternatives are paying 30, 40, $50 per customer through Meta or another ads channel.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's actually a pretty low CAC, cost of acquisition,
Yeah.
$30 for a customer these days. I
Yeah.
mean, it may have been that back in 2018, 2019, but things have gotten more expensive now, including customer acquisition.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As the competition has thickened online, there's only a finite amount of eyeballs that you can be put in front of. So as demand has gone up, prices have gone up accordingly. So I still think that, and I see this a bit, that there is a bit of a reversion back to some of those kind of like older tactics, whether it's like mailing or get in front of people in person, because the economics are such now that it can actually be more cost efficient in a number of cases to do that than it is to just try and make the numbers work by running Meta or Google ads or whatever your ad source is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's wind the clock back to like the early days of e-commerce and Meta, right? You're running Facebook ads. probably Facebook and Instagram at that point. Are you doing video ads? Are you doing static ads? Are you driving them to the product detail page, or do you have a pre-sale page or an advertorial page or anything? Or are you just driving them right to the homepage? What's going on the marketing end?
Yeah, it took a while and a lot of trial and error to figure that out. What we found out worked really well was just driving traffic to a trial page, a PDP that was dedicated to somebody to a lower cost offer that allowed people to try the product at a reasonable price. You basically just want to reduce friction and get people to try it. What we learned, which was interesting and unexpected, is that you want to reduce friction so that it's easier for people to try, but you don't want to reduce it so much so that you get people who aren't actually committed to being longer term customers. So what I mean by that is, say you're selling something at $40, well, reducing it to $20, that's reducing friction, and you are going to get higher conversions. Your conversion rate is going to go up. But if you reduce it all the way down to $0, you're going to get really high conversion rates, but you're also going to get a lot of people who are just looking for freebies and who have no intent to purchase beyond that first time purchase, which they're getting for basically free. So you really need to, if you are going to do some kind of strategy on the front end to try and acquire customers, you really need to be cognizant of the fact that, yes, this could really help drive conversions on the front end, but how many of those people are actually going to come back and purchase again, and how many are just looking to take advantage of this one time opportunity?
You're absolutely right. Friction is a very tricky thing, right? Most people see friction as a bad thing, but if you know how to use it properly, sometimes adding friction to the process can actually increase conversion rates. I've had many times where I've done that for supplement clients, and we've increased the conversions just by adding friction to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I remember we trialed a quiz, which effectively, and you've probably seen these in your own experience, but you land on a site, it's like, what are your health goals? Are you looking to lose weight? Are you looking to gain muscle? Are you looking to increase longevity, etc.? And you would think that that would actually decrease conversions because you're adding a bunch of questions that somebody now has to answer. But we actually saw the opposite, because I think people get emotionally invested because they're like, oh, it's a quiz. I want to learn like more about myself, or I want to get personalized recommendations. And despite the fact that you're adding like 5 questions that they have to answer that they didn't have to answer before, it actually helps increase conversion rates and overall sales, which is counterintuitive if you're just looking at it through like a pure friction reduction, reduce clicks perspective.
Absolutely. It adds a little bit of commitment, right? Because they've just gone through this quiz, they've just committed. As long as you're positioning the quiz questions properly as well, using psychology, not just asking them, are you a man or are you a woman? How tall are you? It's like, no, 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 no. You have to use it strategically. It's not just about adding friction. It's about adding friction in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And you stumbled upon something else that is works well in the industry for supplements, right? It's taking them to a dedicated landing page rather than your regular PDP page or your home page, because you're absolutely right. Making a acquisition offer that's completely designed to acquire a first time customer is very different than your regular standard offer. And you can't really do that on your PDP page, your product detail page. You have a lot more flexibility with not only the offer structure, but also the page by taking them to a dedicated page. So before you figured that out, or maybe even not that, in the early days of that traffic, right? What did sales look like? Were they like, a handful of sales a day, or did it start right out of the gate pretty well?
Yeah, in the early days, I definitely started by just sending traffic to the homepage. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't realize that that was effectively just like
Wasting money.
yeah, not lighting money on fire, but like pretty close to it. And then I was like, okay, so you basically want to make it as easy as possible for somebody to complete the process. So let's send them directly to the PDP. And then that reduces obviously the clicks that somebody has to do. If they go to the homepage, then they don't have to take so many steps to click through to actually see the product. And then we eventually graduated to, okay, well, let's start to do dedicated landing pages depending on the audience that we're reaching. Are we trying to appeal to a woman in her 40s who's looking to kind of optimize body composition? Are we trying to appeal to a man in his 20s who's looking to put on a lot of muscle? Because you want to present the product in a very different light depending on who you are trying to reach, and that's not something that I appreciated at all in the beginning.
Well, you just didn't know what you didn't know. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, but yeah, that in the beginning it was more of a trickle, and then as we started to dial things in, it the numbers started to make more sense. I will say that for certain categories, I have found that certain that consumers are habituated to buying over certain platforms. So, like if you're selling on Amazon and your own website, if depending on the product that you're selling, people could just go to your site just to check it out and learn about it, and then just go back to Amazon and buy it because they already have four other things in their cart and they get free 1 day shipping and they have all their payment info and address in there and they don't have to worry about another account. So that's another thing that we learned and had to kind of evolve with over the years as we just kind of learned more about our customer behavior and consumer behavior in general.
Absolutely. That halo effect is real. I mean, I've even seen it on email promotions that you send out to your customers, and you'll see your Amazon sales go up during that same period.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't really invested too much in TikTok Shop. It's something that's on our list to do on our short list of priorities. But from a number of people that I've spoken with, I've heard that getting a large increase in sales on TikTok Shop almost has a exact correlation with Amazon, meaning that if you get a huge spike on TikTok, you'll see a similar spike on Amazon because there's a portion of the audience who is not going to buy off TikTok, but they will basically use TikTok as like a search engine and then go over to Amazon and complete the purchase.
You're absolutely right again. Yeah. It's like the meta ads, the TikTok ads, the email is really the demand generating engine. And then fulfilling that demand is wherever the customer wants to buy, right? That's where the omnipresence comes in, right? It's like, I know I'm an Amazon customer. Like I said, they have something in their cart. They're Prime members. They want to get it faster. Or it's just, I don't have to put my damn credit card number in, it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like where that's something that we had to almost like let go of is instead of forcing consumers to buy from the channel that you want them to buy through, just let them buy from wherever they buy. Like I said, if they're buying our product, it doesn't matter if they're getting it from a grocery store, a corner store, Amazon, TikTok, our site, they're still at the end of the day consuming our product. So instead of trying to force them to a specific channel, just it's almost like a philosophical stance, but let go of it and acknowledge the fact that you should let them purchase for whatever's most frictionless for them.
Yeah. I mean, it makes attribution almost impossible, but the real driving metric really should be LTV at the end of the day. And as long as that's going up, it doesn't really matter where they're buying.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just put yourself in their shoes, like why would they buy from your own site that has a shipping threshold they have to meet? They have to manage another account. The product is the same cost. They're probably going to get it slower than if they get it through Amazon. Like based on every dimension, it probably makes more sense to buy it through Amazon. So why would you expect a rational consumer to buy from you if you yourself probably wouldn't buy from your own site?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the times, well, all of the times, customers aren't rational. I mean, even we're not rational either, right?
Yeah.
We were just talking about like before the call, like some irrational things with Star Wars, right? That comes back to
Yes.
emotion,
Yeah.
you
100%.
know.
100%.
So
Yeah. And we found that there are other we can use other ways that we can really utilize our site to drive more like emotional connections, deeper deeper connection with the brand. Some people want that. Some people just want to consume the product and move on with their life. But some people really want to know who's making this. They want to know more about behind the product. And our site gives us the real estate to really communicate that in a way that we can on platforms that we don't own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go back to year three when you hit 1.5 million. What was going on with the business? What was going on? Like, is that the point where you took in some outside funding? Like, what was it that got you over the 1 million mark?
I think I'm a big proponent of the product, and I think if you have a very strong product, your job in marketing is far easier because if you have a really strong product, it kind of sells itself. And what I like an example that I'll give is when just say when cars first came out, you didn't really have to sell somebody on why they would want a car. It's just kind of self-evident why you would want a car to get around. There's not really marketing. You don't need to sell somebody on the benefits of it. It's like you drive from A to B and you can do it much faster than you can riding a horse. So at that point, if you have a really strong product, it becomes more just about telling people about it. And I think that a lot of the work that I had done in the early days to validate the product, to dial it in, really paid off because we were in a really advantageous position once we got online that we had a strong product and we had strong product, we had really strong retention. And I think retention is something that's often overlooked or sometimes takes a backseat to acquisition. But if you do out the mathematics of it, retention is much more, it compounds much faster than acquisition. If you have, say, like 80% retention versus a 20% retention, that's going to be exponential growth versus pretty stagnant growth. So we had really good retention. And because we had really good retention, we didn't really lose customers. And because we didn't really lose customers, we were able to grow really fast. I did not take on any funding at that time. I got to at least 1.5 million, completely bootstrapped within 2 years of launching the product. And that was with, I think, just 3 products at the time. So still a pretty small catalog, but we also benefited from at that time keto was becoming more of a mainstream diet, and because of how I had created the product in the first place, high protein, low sugar, it just happened to be low carb, so it fit perfectly into the kind of keto regimen, and we definitely benefited from that. I was very careful to not marry the product to keto by saying this is like the keto bar or anything like that, because I had seen with the paleo movement, which kind of was winding down at that time, that there were brands who like named their brand, like this is the paleo brand XYZ. And the benefit of doing that is that when the trend is on the upswing, you're basically synonymous with that movement. But it's a double-edged sword because when that trend fizzles or starts to die out, that can also happen to your company. And you've seen that. I've seen that happen with both with paleo companies, with keto companies. And I think that cycle just continues as these trends pop up. People try to align themselves with it, not realizing that if they aren't able to detach their brand from the thing that made them successful, they're going to fizzle when that trend fizzles.
Absolutely. If you want to do that, you could always slap a little sticker on it that says keto, right? And take it off later.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the investment like to get to that 1.5 million? Like you mentioned how long it took. But what about the money side of things?
There wasn't really a huge because I still didn't pay myself anything. So the overhead was virtually nothing. It was just investing in inventory, selling that inventory, and then using the sales to buy more inventory. And one thing that I definitely didn't appreciate that I learned through this process is there's a very big difference between being profitable and being cash flow positive. And profit is something that looks nice on paper, but you can be profitable, but still be cash flow negative, so still be in need of cash. And that's not something that I had really learned. I'd taken courses in school on entrepreneurship and finance and all of that. But until you're actually dealing with it, you don't really fully appreciate what that means. And what I mean by that is that if you need to pay for all of your product up front, you need to pay, say, $100,000 for your product up front, but then you don't get paid by whoever you're selling it to for 6 months, then you paid for a product, you paid $100,000, but you don't get that $100,000 back or whatever it is for 6 months. So you have a gap that you need to cover. Fortunately, because we were selling primarily e-commerce, that cycle was very, very quick. So we could produce the product, and then usually within a month we could sell out of that product. So it was a very quick cycle from when we bought the inventory to when we converted that inventory back into cash. And that is what probably the single most important thing that allowed me to get to over $1.5 million without any outside investment. Had that been a longer cycle, it would not have been possible. There would have had to have been capital from somewhere in order to support the inventory needs.
What do you attribute that cash flow cycle to? That what was it all conversion rate or?
That was making sure that I didn't overbuy inventory. I only really bought 6 to 8 weeks of inventory at a time. And fortunately, when you're growing like that too, you go through inventory quickly. So it was a combination of the growth we were experiencing at the time, which was due to having a really strong product. Conversion rate, I think, absolutely helped, but making sure that we weren't overcommitting to inventory and that we were just running it really, really tight on the ops side of things. So it was really just a simple formula of there's virtually like no overhead because I was the only employee and I didn't pay myself anything. And then just buying inventory, buying like a month and a half, 2 months of inventory, and converting that as quickly as possible back into cash so we could buy more inventory and then just keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other lever that you can really cut as easily as ops because you need inventory and you need the marketing dollars to spend to Meta. So the only place that you have really to cut to make a business work is to be really super lean on operations.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you look at, I mean, even the P&L today, it's cost of goods, it's marketing, and it's fulfillment, and then just like operations. I call it software and salaries. Software and salaries, and that's really we don't have any physical space today. We don't have a warehouse. We don't have an office. So our only true like keeping the lights on cost is really software and salaries.
Yeah. And what point were you at when you hired your first employee?
Um, it was probably approaching the $2 million mark when I got the first employee.
Nice. You kept
Um,
it lean for a long time then.
yeah, I'm a big, probably to my detriment a lot of the times, but I'm a big fan of keeping it as lean as possible. I'm just like I love efficiency and I love doing less with more. So I think that comes back to bite me sometimes because I might wait too long in order to bring on the resources needed to do something. But uh, I think in general, having that very lean methodology and trying to do as much as possible with as little as possible is a very good operating system, especially when you're trying to bootstrap a company.
Absolutely. And then you raised money. What back was it? 2020 or was it earlier or
Yeah,
later than that?
2020 was the first time that we had raised money. And fortunately, it was February of 2020. So literally a couple of weeks prior to COVID, kind of shutting down the world. I think we finished the fundraising in the third week of February, and then the flights from Europe to US were shut down like 2.5 weeks later. So, and the stock market kind of crashed the month after that.
Mhm.
So, that was not planned. Like we didn't foresee COVID coming, and we're like, we need to get capital in to batten down the hatches. That was just pure luck that we happened to do that, but it probably would have been much harder, if not impossible, to get the funding after COVID had happened because it it was just too much of a shockwave, especially to investors who risk is always front and center. And when you have something like a unprecedented global pandemic, that is a lot of risk.
Yeah, you got it at the right time.
Yeah,
What was it
exactly.
that drove you? Because you were bootstrapped for a while. I mean, you have a very bootstrap mentality. You know, you're a hustle kind of guy, right? But what was it that made you decide to get outside funding?
I was bootstrapped for a while, and I actually, in hindsight, if I were to do it again, I don't think that I would have needed to raise the funding because primarily our inventory, our working capital needs were just getting pretty significant. And we, I didn't have enough knowledge about lines of credit. And because I was still 20, I think I was 23 at the time, and I didn't, 23, maybe 24, I didn't have enough information about, oh, well, a line of credit is intended to be for this exact purpose where you pull on it when you need it for inventory and then you pay it back once you sell through that inventory. And I just didn't really have a familiarity with that. So to solve the working capital issue that we were facing, which was we had like 200, $300,000 of inventory that we need to pay for, I decided to raise money. But if I were to put myself today back in my shoes, then I'm sure I could have figured out a way. I'm positive actually that I could have figured out a way to solve that issue without having to raise capital because as my investor said to me, the most expensive form of capital is equity because equity is finite and you only have 100 points to give away. So you basically want to, even if you're looking at interest rates of different loans, like yeah, 15%, 20%, those sound high, but whatever you're paying, it's not as expensive as equity because again, equity is finite and there's that makes it extremely precious.
Very important lesson. Yeah. So it sounds like most of that money from that funding raise went to inventory, but I'm sure a good deal of it must have also went to advertising because you've got to now sell through hire a number of inventory, or was it a different situation?
Most of it did go to inventory, and we did experience a kind of slump in sales in 2020 because when COVID happened, the primary use case for bars that most people use them for is they're using them on the go. And everyone was no longer on the go. The entire world stopped being on the go for a period of time. So the growth that we had been seeing, it flattened for a bit because everyone was sitting at home, and that was the rise of like sourdough starters and all this home cooking that people were doing. So the use case kind of just evaporated overnight. I remember looking at data, and we were looking at grocery store data, and all of these categories experienced like meteoric growth. Like frozen pizza increased like 500%, and ice cream, like pretty much everything in the grocery store had like banner growth. And one of the only categories, if not the only category that was down significantly was nutrition bars, protein bars. It was down like 30%. So the thing that like benefited pretty much every other food and beverage manufacturer actually was a bit of a, not a crisis, but uh, definitely did not benefit us. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you weather that storm? Because that could have broke the business.
Yeah, fortunately, that's where being very lean is good because um, when the leaner you are, the less overhead you are, the more kind of not room for error, but margin you have, margin of safety, I guess I would call it. So if something does turn and you don't have a significant amount of OpEx that you need to cover, then you're probably in a much better position to weather it than if you have an immense amount of overhead. And that's, in my experience, that's usually where a lot of very capital intensive businesses run into trouble. If you have like a manufacturing facility, for instance, and you have a high amount of OpEx that you need to cover, if you lose one customer, then all of a sudden you're bleeding money because you have immense bills that you have to pay every single day and you no longer have the cash coming in to cover it. That's very, very different than if you have two employees and a couple of software subscriptions and maybe like I think we were paying like $4,000 a month for rent at that point. That's a very, very different scenario than having 50 employees manufacturing facility. So that's again just another reason why I like to run things very lean because it gives you a margin of safety on the upside when you're growing and when you're experiencing a jump in sales, you have more cash to reinvest in marketing, reinvest in inventory. On the downside, on the kind of risk mitigation side, you have more of a margin of safety if things go the other way.
Yeah, it's the economics of the business is really fascinating. I actually love that part of the business, but nobody really talks about it. I'm glad we're talking about it here because it really is one of the keys to making a business grow and really work.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is, and that's why the world loves software businesses because their overhead is so light. They just like I remember, I think Instagram sold to Facebook for like $1 billion, and I think they had like 5 employees. Obviously, that was the unique case, but that's just not really possible to do with any other business besides like a software or some kind of e-commerce digital business because you can afford to have virtually no overhead because it's all distributed online.
Yep. But I mean, step one, if we were to break this down into a playbook, have a killer product,
Yeah.
right? Killer product that really has a unique perspective, a unique fit in the marketplace, right? Because very few brands or protein bars were really a functional food at the time when you launched it. That was kind of new and novel, right? Flavor profile super important to your products, particularly, and really like your. Then it's all about understanding the customer, like, and that's where you spent years of just face to face and really learning product market fit, value proposition. And I'm during that time, I mean, you must have invested thousands up to that point before really selling anything, like tens of thousands probably.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say even if I were to do it all again, and I don't plan for this to be my last venture, I would spend such an enormous amount of time on the product because the visual that I would give somebody who hasn't necessarily gone through this before is if you can really nail the product and have something so good that people will I'll give you an example actually because I'm from Massachusetts. There's a brewery in the middle of Massachusetts and it's very inconvenient. It's like a 2 hour drive from Boston, maybe 3 hour drive from Boston, and people will drive 3 hours just to get their beer because they don't distribute it in stores. So the only way you can get it is by going there. If people are willing to basically dedicate their day to drive 3 hours, 6 hours round trip to get your product, you know you have a very, very good product, especially in this day and age where people want it faster, quicker, easier. And you basically want to have a product like that where people are willing to be made, like the more inconvenience someone is willing to be to get your product, the better product you probably have.
Talk about friction. My God,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
I know,
ultimate.
seriously. Yeah, yeah, I know. So I would spend so much time on the product and the visual I was going to say is if you have a great product, it's like a knife cutting through warm butter. And conversely, if you have a poor product, it's like a knife trying to cut through a brick. Like no amount of force is going to make it work. But if you have a great product, you only need to apply a little amount of force for that knife to cut through that warm butter. And it's so I see this, I've seen this so many times where brands will make the mistake of pouring immense amounts of money into marketing, into scaling before they have true product market fit. And they just burn money doing it. And then especially if they've raised money, then they burn that money and they now don't see the growth that they were expecting. They have a down round, they have to raise more money, and then they lose control of the company. You do not want to be in that position. And you can save yourself from that by just making a really, really good product where the money that you should use in marketing, it should be used to amplify the pull that you are organically getting. It should not be used to kind of like shove a product in front of people that doesn't necessarily solve a problem for them.
Absolutely. If you amplify a bad offer, right? Meaning if you spend more money to drive traffic to a page that has a bad offer on it, you're just going to amplify crap, really, right? It's not going
Yeah,
to work, right? But to get that good product, right? To get a product as good as Atlas bars, really it takes time and money. Do you think it takes anything else other than that?
I think it takes time, money, but I think it really takes a really deep understanding of who is buying it and why they are buying it. And so I've spent a lot of time talking to our customers on the phone. I'll call them and I'll really understand who they are, like almost develop a psychographic profile on them to understand, okay, what does this person's day look like? Why do they work hard to earn their money? They could spend their money on a near infinite number of things. Why do they spend their money with us? And what specific like primal problem are we solving in their life? And honestly, when I did that enough, I realized that for most people, for us, it's really peace of mind because they just know that whether they're traveling, whether they're going to work, if they have an Atlas bar, they have the peace of mind that they have something that they could feel good about eating. It has clean ingredients. They don't have to worry about that. It doesn't have anything nutritionally that is a flag for them. It doesn't have any added sugar. It doesn't have really any sugar at all. It has protein. And so it just gives them this peace of mind that they're doing something good for themselves and they just don't even have to think about it. There's no like there's so many foods where even I consume and you're like, this seems good and like the marketing has convinced me that this is good, but in the back of my mind, I know that I probably shouldn't be having this. Maybe it's an ingredient that they're using, or maybe it's something on the nutrition label that gets you, but you're like, I shouldn't have this. And so when we talk about reducing friction, I also think about like cognitive friction and reducing all of those questions that people maybe aren't even vocalizing, but they have in the back of their mind about your product.
Yeah, it's really understanding where the product fits in their life. Right? And
Yes.
then it's tapping into what belief systems already exist in the mind of the buyer that we can align with the marketing message.
Yes. Exactly.
Right.
And I think the ultimate goal is to have something that if you have something that solves a real problem in somebody's life, then the absence of that thing will actually cause the person like pain. Like if I were to no longer have my phone, I would be majorly inconvenienced. Or same thing with my laptop that I'm on right now. And so I think that's a very good kind of heuristic or mental model to use is if people were to no longer have my product, would they just kind of like shrug and move on with their lives and find something that replaces it? Or would they be very upset? Be like, this really helped me. This solved a actual problem for me. And my life, the quality of my life is impacted because I can no longer get this product.
Right. Right. That's the definition of are you making a difference in the world, right? It's like, oh, it's always moving away from pain and towards pleasure when it comes to marketing. But
Right.
if you can encompass that in a product, right? And then now you have a brand,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We've just defined very clearly what product market fit is and what a brand is in the last 2 minutes, which was great.
Yeah.
what's what's on the horizon for Atlas at this point? You're going more into the functional food area, you're expanding the product line, or just looking to scale.
We're doing all of the above. We are looking at expanding the product line. We are looking at expanding into new product lines. I think we have three that we're exploring right now, in addition to expanding our current product line. We're also looking at scaling. We're scaling quite well right now without doing any of that expansion. And so when you look across like all of the ways that you can expand the brand, you're like, okay, we can expand. I kind of think about it like horizontally and vertically, like what channels are we on right now? Can we expand onto more channels? So we're working right now to expand our presence on like Walmart.com, which has not been a major channel for us, but that's like a horizontal expansion because we've added another channel that we're available on. We're also going we're going vertical with Atlas bars because we are adding more products to Atlas bars. So I would say that's going deeper with this current line, but then going horizontal by adding additional lines or working on adding additional lines, which we will in the future. So when I look at all of the different opportunities and all the different ways to expand the brand, it's pretty exciting because I think there's just a lot we can do. And then on the functional food side, there's a direction that we are working to go in that I view as a really significant untapped opportunity that I think we're in a really perfect position to position ourselves in. And we haven't launched it yet. We haven't evolved our messaging to get there yet, but that should come in the next quarter or two. And I'm really excited to see how that's received.
What you said was really, really important. I want to just highlight it for listeners because you're at the point now where you're looking to expand the product line horizontally and vertically. But that is after 8 years, right? Because you started in 2017. 8 years of one product, 4 flavors, and just really honing in on perfecting that. Right? You didn't expand until 8 years later, which is, I think, amazing because a lot of people get trapped in making so many different product lines, so many different offers, so many different products that everything gets diluted. And then they don't know what's working. They can't get one thing to work because they've got so many plates spinning. Like, I love the focus of just that one quality offer, product, message, customer.
Yeah, I'm a big simplicity guy, and I like the simplicity of just a single product focus. And I remember reading a book. I think this was before I had even started Atlas or when I was in the early days of it. I think it was the 22 Laws of Branding or something like that.
Oh,
And I
yes.
think,
I know the book.
okay.
Trout, or Reese Trout, or something
Yes,
Trout.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. And I think one of it might be the first law, but it's basically the power of a brand is inverse to the number of things that it's on. Basically, meaning that, like, if you slap your brand name on a million different things, you dilute the meaning of it. Whereas if it is focused, it's just think about it like a light, like it's like a diffuse light, like a overhead light. Whereas if you focus on one product line, it's like a laser because now Atlas just represents bars. That's all it represents. Versus if we had protein powders and pre-workouts and protein bites and all these different things, the consumer just doesn't really know. They're like, I don't really know what this company is. Like, I don't know what to think about. But when
Right.
people think about Atlas now, they're just like, Atlas is it's bars. Like, you own more. You the mental real estate that you own in somebody's head is much more defined.
Yes. You want a clear rung on the ladder in their mind of a brand. Like,
Right.
it is very crystal clear.
Right. Exactly. And that's something that's it's very hard to understand that because the the instinct and the impulse is, well, I should add more products because more products is going to lead to more revenue and more revenue is better. But it's often I've just seen the opposite happen. And this is like, if you want to use a larger example, when Steve Jobs returned to Apple to basically turn the company around, they had like a preposterous amount of products at the time. I think it was like hundreds of products, and he basically slashed them all and was like, "We're gonna do like 2 products. That's it." And that was what helped turn the entire company around. And that's just from the branding and positioning side of things. That's not even touching on the inventory because the more products you have, the more inventory you have to carry, the more cash you have tied up in inventory. So it makes the entire thing more inefficient. So from like every dimension, it's harder, in my opinion, to do that, both from a marketing, but also just from like the financial mechanics of trying to manage a business.
That's really the core right there, because the Steve Jobs example, like, yeah, he basically cut OpEx, operating expenses, all
Yeah.
cut. Great way to reduce expenses, right? And then, like you said, having multiple products, you have to carry all that inventory costs. So again, reducing expenses, in both instances, is a reduction in order to grow.
Yeah, exactly. I was in a Walmart not too long ago, and I remember just being in the middle of the store, and I was just kind of like, I was looking around. And I was like, man, how do they make this work? Because I was just looking at all the shelves, and I was just trying to calculate in my head, like, I wonder what the total cost of inventory that they just have in this one store is. And then I was multiplying that out over all their stores, and I was like, man, there's just so much, like the amount of cash that they just have tied up in inventory, and all the shelves are completely full of TVs, of computers, of lawnmowers, of like everything. And I'm just like, I don't, it's got to be tens of millions of dollars per store, but I, I am, I have a lot of respect for that company for being able to make that work because that is a challenging problem.
Easily. And that's why it's such razor thin margins for that kind of business, right? It's
Right.
much better economics online, direct to consumer. even with all the multi channels involved, Amazon, Walmart, like you said, that's all halo effect once you start getting some traction.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
James, this was wonderful. How can people get some Atlas bars and taste the goodness?
Atlasbars.com is our own site, but as we talked about in this conversation, the more frictionless way to get it is probably through Amazon. If you have an Amazon account, so just search Atlas and it'll come up. And yeah, look out for more products because we'll be coming out with more in the next couple of quarters here.
Fantastic. James, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.